program. You can tell everything is somewhat unrehearsed. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me? All right, can you hear me now? You can hear me now, okay. You young ones realize that us older ones grew up here and worked all these fields and everything. And it looks different now than it did back then. But we're kind of in the season of too quiet.
Close to the mouth.
Need to get into it, George. July the 4th coming up, and we've got a lot of people in America that have given their lives. Some have given a lot of time to make sure that we're free and could be here today and enjoy the freedom that we have. And I know Wayne sitting over here with Emily would be the oldest person here. He's 94 years old. And nobody didn't know much about his tour in the military until the last few years. And I reckon he had medals that he kind of kept hid somewhere. Didn't want to talk about it much. And I think Emily drug him out and has them displayed. I don't even know how many. I know one of them is a Purple Heart, and that's pretty tall when you hear that being discussed. And what all the others are for, I don't even know what they are. 21 medals for his service time. And he's older than I am, so in his 94 years, in addition to the military, well, he's seen a lot of living. And we have some younger ones here. Bobby and Jimmy were both in the military, and Kenny. Y'all stand up. Kenny's on the phone right there. I thought we did something. Are there others that I don't know of? Anybody else in the military? There's Kenny back there. Go take. He's Tom's boy, you know, Kenneth's son. But anyway, you that have served and given time, some gave all, as the song would say, some gave their lives so we could be here today. I've never been in the military. I was either married, had children, or was in college, and I didn't make it. I guess I wasn't looking forward to it, but I didn't dodge it. But us that have never been in the military, they'd be very thankful for those that have dominated as much time as they have. And Karen has written a little song that has to do with the military, and we're going to let her do that right now.
Yeah, that'll work.
She's my young.
This song is titled Rally Around the Flag. I wrote this after Desert Storm in 1991. Desert Storm was sure and swift, and that's a good thing. I lived in Seymour at the time, and Seymour High School was putting together an assembly, and we were just all swelling with pride as to what had happened. So the assembly, I didn't play well enough to perform, and I didn't have it recorded, so I did get to be there with the children. And a member of the band, the marching band, recited this. So I pulled it out a couple of weeks ago and performed it at my music group, and they really liked it. And I've not seen this in years, but boy, is it ever timeless. And Wayne, thank you. A salute to all of y'all who have served. Sound guy. I usually just play in my bedroom, so this is new. Am I plugged in? Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. Here we go. Peacetime, wartime, anytime, rally round the flag. Nowhere but the USA is their freedom we have. Keep the vision full in sight that our forefathers had. Show your honor and support and rally round the flag. When our troops march off to war, rally round the flag. Keep them in your prayers each day until they come marching back. Sons and daughters in the fight bravely defend our land. Stand with them for liberty and rally round the flag. So glory is flying high. Oh, glory is worth the fight. Stars and stripes forever wave. Rally round the flag. Many contributions made for the valiant noble task. Weave the fabric true and right, and it will always stand. Show your love, America, and rally round the flag. Old glory is flying high. Oh, glory is worth the fight. Weave the fabric true and right, and it will always stand. Show your love, America, and rally round the flag. Show your love, America, and rally round the flag.
You hear that, it makes you think of Merle Haggard and the Okie from Muskogee. Of course, if they don't think like we do, I think they ought to go somewhere else. Also, Harry, come this way. We've got a young gentleman with us that has spent his life in the military, and Harry will take care of that.
Well, I'm not a Whitehead, but I married into the Whiteheads.
Outlaw in.
But I've heard Laura tell several people in the years past that if you married a Whitehead, you became one of us. So it's been almost 60 years, and I guess I've made it now. I don't think I will be thrown out anyway soon. But just to give you a little bit of history, I think I did marry up when I married into the Whitehead family, and a lot of guys will say this. I remember these 60 years in August, standing over there in the church with Laura's older brother Keith, who was a minister. He performed the ceremony. When I saw Laura walking down the aisle with her father, I thought I'd already died and gone to heaven. And so anyway, I did marry up, but 7 years before that, Keith, I guess, could have also married up because he married my older sister, Betty. Don't know whether a lot of you younger ones knew that or not, but they were married, and Keith passed away, I guess, in 1971 with colon cancer. But he had 3 children, and the first of those children was the first grandchild of Charles and Jane Whitehead, Jim, standing back there. Now, Jim, he's carried on a pretty good legacy himself, because with that, the first great-grandchild was born, Jen. Okay, Jenny. And then from Jen, the first great-great-grandchild, Cassie. She's not here today, but Cassie's two little ones are here with Jen, and they are the great-great-great-grandchildren of Charles and Jane Whitehead. So that's some legacy right there. And also there's Bobby of that union there, and Bobby was in the military, and in fact, he was, I guess, at ROTC at Carson Newman, went as a second lieutenant, and he inherited the knees of the Bryan family, and so he had to take early retirement, but he did come out as a captain, I believe, in the Army. Now, we have two children, Janet and Chris. They have two children. Did Brian make it? Yeah, Brian and Paige are here. And that's the youngest of the newest of our family, Paige. Brian got married back in March. So glad to have them here with us. And Logan, yep, Logan's sitting over there too. But anyway, said we married up. Now, someone else married up in the family too when he married a Whitehead. And that's this fellow sitting over here with a guitar in his lap, Mike Jones. Now, I'll tell you why he did marry up, because Mike and Pat's the youngest of the Keith's children. Well, they were both students at Carson Newman, and Pat reminded us a few months ago that, hey, when we were students, that I was already part of corporate America because I was a cashier at Piggly Wiggly. Mike was just working at a little convenience mart, so I was way above him. But anyway, Mike graduated from Carson Newman, ROTC, went on into the Army as a second lieutenant, worked his way up to Major General. And that is really an accomplishment, and I'm certainly proud of him. But he has served a couple of tours in Iraq, been in Afghanistan. His last assignment before retiring about 4 years ago, 5? 6? Wow, 6 years ago. He was Chief of Staff of Central Command in Tampa, Florida. And his immediate supervisor was none other than General Mattis, who is now Secretary of Defense. But now you would never know that from Mike because he doesn't talk about those things. But I'm sure when, he's spoken internationally, and if you Google Major General Mike Jones, you'll probably find YouTube of him testifying before the United Nations on the Gaza conflict and Hamas, those things, or you might see some information about him training the Iraq police force, and those things that you don't hear him talk about. But I'm sure when he writes his memoirs, even though he's spoken at commencement graduations, university graduations, and spoken internationally, probably one of his highlights is going to be speaking to the Whitehead family here on the Whitehead family farm. So Mike, come on up and tell us some of your experiences.
Thanks, Harry. Well, the difference between Harry and me is that when he married in Whitehead family, he thinks he moved up. In my case, I know I moved up. Well, first of all, I'm honored to be with all of you. Unfortunately, over the years, 41 years ago when we got married, pretty soon after that, Pat and I took off, started running around a lot of places around the world, which meant for many of you, I haven't gotten to know you very well. And so that's the downside, is there are Whitehead and Brian Kin that we occasionally see, but it's been once in blue moon. Hopefully we'll correct that sometime here in the future when we get to be around a little more. But there's a lot of downsides to being away from home a lot. There's some upsides too. So Harry asked me to just tell a couple stories about maybe some of the experiences that we've had elsewhere. So I just thought of three things. I'll talk a little bit about how being other places has caused me to think a little differently about some things, how being in other places have given me the opportunity to be around some unique people, and then I'll try to shut up and be quiet, which is hard for me to do sometimes. So the first story I want to tell is about the way we think about things. You know, I grew up here in America, we're very American-centric. The way we think about things is the way things are. So fast forward a lot of years, I end up in Iraq, and I'm training Iraqi forces to stand up and become security forces. And in the process of trying to teach these former military leaders and police leaders how to be leaders in a police force or a military force in a democratic society, it's a whole lot different than in the days of Saddam. I got to know some folks pretty well. But there are a lot of things about Iraq that bothered me that I didn't care for. So one day I'm sitting around talking to this colonel who's kind of our protege brigade commander in our area. And I tell him, I say, you know, I don't know how you can stand all this corruption that you guys put up with here. Why do you tolerate that? He says, what are you talking about? I said, the whole society is corrupt here, and you guys tolerate it. He says, we're not a corrupt society. Yeah, there's some people that do corruption. We put them in jail, but we're not a corrupt society. I said, of course you are. Corruption is so bad here, you actually have a word for it. It's called bakshish. That you have to pay bakshish to get anything done in society. That if you go to get a driver's license, you have to pay bakshish, a little extra to the person in order to process your claim quickly. Or if you want a passport and you want it in a reasonable amount of time, you pay a little bakshish in order to get what you want. And finally, after I gave him all these examples, he says, you know, you Americans are a bunch of hypocrites. And I don't get told that too often, so that kind of got my attention. And I said, what do you mean we're not hypocrites? He says, you do the exact same thing. I say, no, we don't. He says, of course you do. I said, absolutely not. In America, we don't have to pay people bribes to get something done. He says, let me ask you a question. You ever go out to dinner with your wife back in America? I said, of course I do. He says, when you go to the restaurant and you order something off the menu that costs $10, and your wife orders something that costs $10, what do you pay for your meal? I said, well, $20. He says, no, you don't. I said, of course I do. If it's on the menu for $10 and she got $10, then it's $20. He says, but how much do you actually pay? I said, well, 10 and 10 is 20 in our math. He says, no, you don't. You pay more than that. I said, well, okay. Well, we pay tax, and if service was good, then we pay a tip. He says, yeah, see, there's no difference between you and me. The only difference between you and me is that I pay the tip before the service, and you pay the tip after the service. So, you know, he may have something there. Not only that, somebody else later, when I told that story, pointed out to me, he said, you know, there might be another difference in that story. That means they trust each other more than you Americans do. Because they pay the tip in advance for good service, knowing that they'll get it. You guys make somebody prove it before you give them a tip. Well, that's kind of interesting. So it gives you a different way. You're both looking at the exact same thing, but it was amazing how differently we looked at that exact same thing. And you know, the way I was looking at it wasn't necessarily right. The other fun part about being in different places is you get to meet interesting people. So I talked about this one person. I think I can count on my fingers the number of people that I would say I've met that are strategic thinkers. And I've met lots and lots of folks. We've served all over the world. We've served in Washington a couple times. And I got to be exposed to the most senior leaders of our government and lots of other governments. But I'd say there are only a handful of strategic thinkers. And so I'm going to tell a story about a guy. His name was Shinseki. And General Shinseki was the chief of staff of the Army, and I was the head of his staff group. one of the many jobs that we did for him as his staff group was every time before an event, we would have to prepare him for whatever it was. He was the most prepared human being on the planet, I think, for everything he ever did. So before he would get a briefing of somebody coming in asking for a decision, our staff group would go through the preliminary materials, the read-ahead packages and so forth, and then we'd go in and sit down and say, all right, well, here's what they're going to tell you. Here is the information about what you've told them to do that they're coming back to you on, or here's your previous guidance and so forth, and what they're doing is lined up with what you said, or in some cases, they're not doing what you said. And so we would go through that, and at the end there's always kind of a recommendation, and we would say, all right, and we concur with the recommendation to do X. So after a couple months, one of the things I noticed was about half the time he'd be sitting in the meeting, and ever who the briefer was, some gentleman would say, all right, Johnson Secchi, this is our recommendation. He'd say, you know, that's a good recommendation, I think that's a good solution, but what I think I'd rather do is this. Or course of action number 3 is very good, but I think I want to go with course of action number 2 and maybe change it a little bit or do something. But it wasn't the thing that we had recommended that he do. So finally I went back in and said, hey, General, look, we're not doing a good job for you. Because if we were doing a good job, then when you actually got the briefing that we'd been through and everything, that if we'd made the recommendation, you approved it, you'd approve it. But since you're doing something different, there's obviously something that we're not getting here. So General Shinseki says, well, Mike, what you got to understand is that I'm not trying to make the best decision for me. See, I'm only here for 4 years. I'm trying to make the best decision for the Chief of Staff after next. Because I know what problems I have, but I have no idea what problems that Chief after next is going to face. And so the optimum decision for me may be best for me, but it's not the best thing for the Army if the Chief after next is handcuffed and doesn't have lots of freedom to deal with whatever that problem is that I don't even know what it is. Boy, talk about somebody who's selfless, who doesn't do the optimum thing for themselves, but does something less for themselves in order to take care of somebody that they don't even know who they are or what their problems are going to be. And that taught me a lot about, you know, what selfless service really means. What was the third thing? Since I can't remember the third thing, I guess that's it. But yeah, but that's the value of having traveled around and been in different cultures and seeing different things, is it really causes you to have a different perspective and figure out that sometimes, even though you may think that you really know everything about something, and I did that a lot, turns out that, you know, other people may have a different angle on it that may teach you something and teach you to know so much about it after all. So thanks for listening to me, and it's really great to be with you. Thanks for taking us in your arms and welcoming me as a Whitehead clan. Thanks.
Is this one alive at all? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah,
Can
you
you hear
get-
me all right? Shorter?
Yeah, Mike, you get to play for your dinner now.
What we're gonna do, Karen has written a song, and we're gonna sing it. And Roger, after we sing this, hand out that sheet music, and we're gonna do some hymns, I mean, just like other church, for everybody. And Mike and Pat, and whoever, Pat, and jump right in and just help out. This is all off the cuff, pretty much unrehearsed, and relax. And it'll relax us and enjoy it. But
Raise us high enough you can't see us.
But we can't see you.
Can't hide behind it. I'm sorry, it won't go that way.
one thing I've learned in life, you can't look at anybody and tell much about them. I mean, literally. I mean, Mike, he's a general, and way up the ladder, he gets just like we do, doesn't he? I mean, he gets. I mean, Wayne, I mean, all the military he's done, all these other things. But I learned that in the stockyard business years ago. Somebody come in there with a lady that you could tell was his wife, and get there after the banks had closed, and you couldn't run a credit check on him. He'd buy $40,000 worth of cattle, and you might get a bad check. If he's some old farmer come in there, look about like Andy, he'd call you over in the corner and say there's a set of heifers back there that look like they make good cows, and I just wanted to make sure it's all right if I bid on them. I'd say, that'd be all right. And he'd buy a pen or two, $15,000, $20,000 worth, and sale big over, and he'd put me over the corner, and he said, when all them other people get out of it, I'll pay for mine. And he'd thin out, and he'd go in there, and he'd work out his pocket a while, out of this pocket, and I've got some more somewhere else. And he'd take cash on the barrel. You can't tell by looking at a person what they can do. You really can't. This is a song that Karen has written. Well, I thought she was trying to get my attention. She just hit me with her instrument. But I'm going to help them a little bit. And then after that, we'll got about 4 hymns and sing a couple of verses.
Hang on and let us get ready. We're probably more like a comedy routine. This key actually worked yesterday. We'll see what today does. If not, we'll
adjust.
We'll adjust. I've gone home to be with Jesus. Please don't cry for me alone. I left this world on major wing. I'll shout his praise for eternity. Heavenly streets of gold, I've gone on home. I saw the struggles of, I saw the pearly gates of glory. The struggles of the old life passed away. Angels sing the hallelujah chorus. Delivered to the earth, Christ, oh happy day. I've gone home to be with Jesus. Please don't cry for me below. I left this world on major wing. I'll shout his praise for eternity. Heavenly streets of gold, I've gone on home. He's the light who drove away my darkness. Heaven's empty, my falling soul. He's eternal love and my salvation. My shame and valley of death, and now I'm home. I've gone home to be with Jesus. Please don't cry for me below. I left this world on a major wing. I'll shout his praise for eternity. Heavenly streets of gold, I've gone on home. Heavenly streets of gold, I've gone on home.
Hand those out, Roger. We'll just do church for a little while. The first song we're going to do is How Great Thou Art. And if you back up years ago, Keith was really sick. In fact, he was gone in 50 weeks. And then Pat went up to to their house. And when they go in, Pat's about 15, 16 years old, and Pat was playing the piano, and Keith was standing there singing "How Great Thou Art." And I've never heard that story till this week, and Andy and I were talking on the phone, and it kind of moved me. And that's one that Andy wanted to do in memory of our brother Keith. I don't have any music to that. Henry, you got it right here. Totally unrehearsed, like we did in this church, and sing okay. Do the first and the last verse of these songs. Okay, first and last verse.
I'll give us a small intro.
My turn. Get that thing up, Mike. In the right key, y'all sing.
I can't hear you.
Okay, I never heard my daddy sing much at all. Usually in church where he just stood there and didn't sing. Of course, I left home when I was 18 and started college and never was back. And then moved to Jamestown 60 years ago. But Andy was around Mom and Dad most of their lives that they lived in the community. And there's a couple of songs that Andy told me this week that he heard Dad sing quite a bit out in the pasture field or in the tobacco patch or milking cows or whatever. And one of those was Jesus Paid It All, and then another was the old rugged cross. So in Dad's memory, we'll sing the first and last verse of Jesus Paid It All.
We are too. On a hill far away, stood an old rugged cross. In the marks of rain on the shade, and I love that old cross, where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. The old rugged cross I will ever be true. Through shame and reproach gladly bear. It will call me one day to my home far away, where its glory forever I'll share. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown.
All right, we're going to do a couple of verses of Amazing Grace, first and last verse of Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now was blind, but now I see. We've been where 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less taste to sing God's praise than when we first began.
Sing the last verse again. Everybody sing out.
When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less taste to sing God's praise than when we first began.
Very good. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. We all done now. We're still playing now. I don't have many purposes. On little bit about how it was back when. Things have changed so much today as compared to 75, 80 years ago that it's just totally unbelievable. If you back up, can you hear me a little better now? If you back up, I was born in '35, and Andy come along 2 or 3 years later, and then Laura Grace 2 or 3 years later, and Rosemary a little later after that, 3 or 4 or 5 years later. Things were a lot different back then. I remember the first car we owned was a 34 Chevrolet. It was a 4-door 34 Chevrolet. It had a cloth top on it. And of course, I was probably 3 or 4 years old when I could first remember. And I know the gas thing didn't register, and Daddy would go back there and take the lid off of it, and he'd shake the car and kind of see how loud it was to where they put in 50 cents or $1. Whereas, of course, back then, $2 would fill one up. But it had a cloth top on it, and it leaked. It leaked quite often. And Daddy had some tar, and you'd get him a wooden paddle, whittle him one off, and he'd smear tar on the top of it. Water made that upholstery look pretty bad. And I don't know, a few years after that, Earl Keller, he had a 60 Ford, I don't know what, it might have been a 39 or 40 model. It had a hard top on it. It was weaker than water. It wouldn't, when it was all in it, it wouldn't pull the Claremorton Hill over there without shifting gears. That'd be like if you went to Mount Lebanon and that first hill you come to. If we was all in it, well, you'd have to shift gears before it would even go up there. We kept it a while, and back in the 40s, the aluminum company got to giving out a gas, a fluoride gas. And what it did, it got on the grass, and it affected the cattle, and the cattle's teeth would come out. And they paid damages for that. And you had to have a veterinarian come out and verify how many you had and how much they were affected and everything. But we ended up with some money out of it. I never did know how much. Daddy didn't want to talk much about it because he kind of thought it was charity anyway. You know, he didn't want to do that. But anyway, he took the money. But in '50, he bought a new Plymouth, and then in '51 he traded again, and he bought 2 in a row there, and that had to come from the fluoride money from Alcoa Aluminum. And they didn't buy another until that Impala Chevrolet. I don't know what year that was. But another thing, you kids today, let me tell you something. Keith had a nice ambassador. He taught me to drive. And he took me down to get my driver's license. And Daddy went to the mailbox. He went to the mailbox every day. And he'd come in and carry those driver's licenses that I bought. And he opened them things up, and he said, "Son, you just wasted your $1." And but in other words, I didn't even start the car back then or out of the garage. The first time I got the car, I'd have probably been close to 17 years old, and Daddy was giving me directions on plowing corn down a 13-acre field back then. And I was wanting a car that night, and Mama was standing there, and I told Daddy on the way out, I mean, I was hurrying when I told him, I said, if I'm big enough to plow over corn, I ought to be old enough to drive a car. And that was with a tractor too at that time. But at dinner, Mother told me I could have the car. That's the first time I ever started in my life. Got the car the first time I ever started. But anyway, those are all true stories, and that's the difference in the way kids are today. And different from the way my kids was raised too. I mean, they had cars when they were 16 or so. But when you talk about work, in other words, I still go to work every day, 5 days a week. Going home 8, 9 hours by choice. Retirement, I've been drawing Social Security about 22 years, 21 years. Retirement is doing what you do because you want to, rather than because you have to. That's retirement. And then you do whatever you want to do. But that is retirement. But we were raised to work. I mean, we worked. We didn't know nothing but work. We went to bed at dark, got up before daylight, milked cows, separated the milk, sold the cream to UT Creamery, and fed the Blue John to the hogs what we didn't drink. And then we hit the field. But we truck farmed, raised tobacco, all kinds of vegetables. This car, this 34 Chevrolet, let me tell you this, 34 Chevrolet, we never owned a truck. Daddy never owned a truck in his life. But he would take the back seat or the passenger seat out of the car and deliver bushel baskets of vegetables to town and sell them for cash. I went with him one time to haul the tobacco off. I wouldn't have been very old. Had every seat out of the 34 Chevrolet, every seat. He sat on a bale of tobacco. That's back when you baled it, you know. He sat on a bale of tobacco to haul it off. And I wondered all the way over there how he was going to get home, but I didn't bring it up. I mean, I didn't talk about it. But he had a 2-gallon bucket hid back there somewhere. And he sat on a 10-quart bucket and drove home in that 34 Chevrolet. Well, if we'd have got stopped, we'd have both been in jail, I guess. But that goes back a ways. We milk cows by hand, from 6 to 8 or 10, night and morning, no electricity. No electricity. Carried the lantern out to the barn, it's gone there, right up there, and hung it on a 20-penny spike. Bring it home, separate, cream, clean up, and go to school. We'd pick strawberries. We'd get up and separate the milk, and be in the strawberry patch at daylight, waiting on it to get daylight enough to tell the red ones from the green ones, okay? And there'd be 5 or 6 of us. And we might get a work an hour that way before the bus ride. And then we'd pick strawberries, hour times 5 hours work. And then we'd run to the house and change clothes and change our wet shoes and go to school. But unique and different. Some of my kids, I know Judy's up the other day, asking about the hand-dug cistern where we got all of our water. The north side of the barn, it's gone now, but some of you older ones have seen it, older grandkids. The north side of the barn was a metal roof, and there was a hand-dug cistern out there. It was about 5 feet and 8 or 10 feet deep, and it stuccoed inside to where it hold water. Daddy knew what months out of the year you could catch water and it wouldn't get wiggle tails in it. It'd be during the cooler season, I'm sure. But had a gutter on this metal roof, and he knew how long it needed to rain and divert the water out of the cistern, okay? I'm not making this up. Maybe a dead bird or two up there, and maybe some bird manure. But he knew how long it would take to clean that naturally and divert the water, and then he would turn it in the cistern. But he knew what months to do that. We carried all of our water from the barn and wash water and drinking water, all out of that cistern. Well, back then milk wasn't purified and water wasn't purified, and I reckon it didn't kill none of us. But it's funny today how different life is today with the age of these smaller children running around here. Wow. You'd think a fly lit on one that might kill it before dark. But it won't. It won't. Need to feed them some dirt, I think. I think that's what's wrong with me. But life is so different. you had a 15-year-old with you and he's trying to move a couch, you'd have to get him to put his instrument down to even pick one end of it up. I've had to do that because they're preoccupied. They don't even know where they're at half the time. But anyway, things, Lord Grace around here somewhere. There she is. What do you all want to talk some, Lord Grace, Roseberry, or any of you? Do any of you have any questions about the way you wrote? I could tell you this, of course, now you know, if a kid didn't have their own bedroom today, I mean, they'd probably come out and check on you. I mean, might take them away from you if they didn't have their own bedroom. Today, the house we were raised in, it's gone now. I think Lord Grace got pictures of it. Yeah, they got pictures of it. Had about 900 square feet in it. And the back bedroom, this was set right out there. Back bedroom, at one time when we was all home, 4 boys slept in the same bedroom. There wasn't a closet in it, okay? Had a hanger over the door going in there. It didn't have any clothes. I mean, it wasn't any big deal. But the bedroom, there's 2 full beds in it. You shove them against the wall this way and this way. And it'd be about a 2.5 foot alley right down the middle of it. 2 in one bed and 2 in another. No water. Andy and I, you could go down there now. It'd still be there. We grew up. You go down there now, and when I was about a sophomore at UT, we concreted up a spring down there to run water to the house. And Daddy'd come down there and check on me and Andy, and he would tell us that concrete wouldn't set up underwater. And I knew he was wrong, because when I'd go to UT, I'd cross that bridge over there, it had piers down under the bottom of the lakes or the river, so I knew it set up, and it did. And so this would have been about 1951 when we did that. And we got some help on running it up here, and finally got water in the house along about then. And then Grandpa Colder died about 57 or 8, and there was 11 of them. And Mama got, I don't know, $600-700 out of his estate in money, and they put a bathroom in the house, and it had to be, 57 or 8, something like that. Tore Daddy all to pieces. He didn't really think you ought to use one of them in the house, you know. He said he thought everything was backwards. So he said you used to eat in the house and do your business outside, and everybody wants to do their business in the house and eat in the yard. They said, but he caught on. I mean, he got towards all right. But life is so different. It's so different. I'm so old that I've decided why people die. They need to. I mean, the world passes them by. It changes so much that it's hard to handle. It's hard to stand. It changes so much. So it's just easier to die and get out of the way and let them have it.
Hey, Daddy,
Yeah.
tell them about your new phone.
Well, I wasn't going to bring that up. No, I had one of them flip phones. I've had it for a long time. Used to have a sack phone. And before that, when I was farming real big, I had a two-way radio, I guess. Two-way radio and a 70-foot tower and a base and 5 different units and everything. And but anyway, I got a sack phone, and I had one of them flip phones up they come in. And I had it till the other day. And what happened was, I went up there to Verizon. That's who I was with, you know, me and Roger. We were at Verizon. And I went up there with that flip phone, and about a 25-year-old lady come out there. And I told her my battery, what must have died, and I need to get me another. And she was real nice. She said, it's so old that we don't sell them no more. And I said, it ain't near as old as I am. And of course, she thought that's funny. But anyway, I took one of the younger girls up there with me to Verizon to help me pick one out. And 3 or 4 different people told me she got the wrong one for me. Got a smartphone and should have got an iPad or something. They're easier to operate. I have learned how to answer it when it rings and maybe make a call on it. But I was trying to get the one where I could get a text and then text back by talking rather than trying to figure it out. And I hadn't got that for you, but I'm still working on it. But times change. Let me say, in the insurance and the banking business, and I'm sure in the military, and every aspect of life, even in disseminating the gospel, for example, things change. And you either change with it or you're left beside the road, okay? It'd be like Chris and Dennis, his boys are in. You shift gears and go with it even if you don't like it. You don't have any choice. You'll be left beside the road. Banking has changed drastically. Insurance, my goodness, it's unbelievable. Upload, download, money just moves so fast you can't even keep up with it. Buy a policy today and it downloads tomorrow. The girls can go right into the computer and it's already in there. So they just check their download log to make sure it matches what they sold. I'm talking off the top of my head. I don't know how to do none of it. Well, I don't.
Proud you could say it.
Well, the thing, life is simple. You just hire people smarter than you are. I tell everybody that'd be smarter than me to work here. And there ain't room for but one person to not do nothing, and that's me. I mean, that's the way I operate. But Stanley sitting back here was raised within 2 miles of here. And I went north and he went with Bowwaters. And until we started having gatherings, we wouldn't have seen each other in 35 or 40 years. So in the last 15 years, Stanley and I have got acquainted with each other. First cousins, raised within 2 miles of each other, didn't even know each other. There was 10 in Daddy's family, first cousins, grown, gone, deceased, that I wouldn't have seen since they were 3 or 4 years old. Colders, there's 11 of them, bukus of cousins. I was around them more. Mama took care of that. She kept us around her people more than we did the Whiteheads. Anybody have any questions about anything? I'm just rambling. Can't hear you, Patsy.
She said they just live behind the Heritage High School.
Do what?
She said they just live behind the Heritage High School. It wasn't as far to go.
Yeah, the Colder family. Daddy was quiet. Mama talked a lot. I mean, Mama could talk. I mean, she could really talk. And Daddy, you wouldn't know whether he's even listening or not, because he's real quiet. Probably ought to tell this, but one day we went up at Grandpa Colder every Sunday. Quick as dinner was over, there wasn't no questions asked. We went to see Daddy at Grandpa Colder's. And we all went. Daddy went whether he wanted to go or not. And one day he took the studs. I would have been 8 or 10, and I wouldn't want to go either. But Daddy decided that he wouldn't, just believe he wouldn't go today. And he told Mama that. Didn't go over too well. But I thought if he could pull it off, I could too. So I decided I'd stay with him. And Dad got out of the driveway, Mom and all the other youngs, other me and Daddy. And we was walking out towards the barn out here. There's a lane out to the barn. And we got out there about where you go through the gate into the barn lot, and hadn't been nothing said. Daddy said to me, if it wasn't for you children, said I'd left your mama a long time ago. I didn't tell that. But he was upset. But But that's the reason, Stanley, we never were around any of the Whitehead family, because Mother had us around the Colder family. It's just reality is all I'm talking about. I'm not blaming anybody or fussing about nothing. I'm talking about life and the way we were raised. That's what I'm talking about. But the way we were raised, we were proud poor people, okay? We were proud poor people. We wasn't proud we was poor. We was proud anyway. If we had been in need of something, my mother and daddy would have told a story about it and let on like we were all right. Daddy was born in 1900, and in 1965, when you turned 60, back then, when you got to be 65, well, you were good for Part A and Part B back then. Start drawing so full. I was in extension service at Jamestown, doing 4-H club work. And I was talking to Daddy about signing up for Social Security. And he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to hear it. And I talked to him for 4 or 5 months about it every time I saw him, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So one day it was raining, it's an extension order, and I sat down and wrote him a letter and mailed it to him. And told him, I said, look, I'm not going to mention this anymore. And I didn't. But it was over a few months later, and we were sitting there in the living room, and he's sitting over there amongst all the racket. And he looked over my way and caught my eye. He got up to go get a drink of water, went down behind. Is that the big oak there, Andy, where the... Okay, there's a garage there, and we walked down behind that big oak right there. And Daddy said, say Charlie Boy. I said, yeah. He said, he wouldn't call it by name, you know. He said, you know that you've been talking to me about? I said, yeah. He said, by George, said, you know. Said, I looked into that and said, we did that. And said, I got a check the other day that had back pay on it or something for $500 or $600, what it was. And of course, Kiker, Emily's daddy, would be the one that would have helped with that, because he was up on all of that kind of stuff. The point I'm making goes back to being proud poor people. Daddy thought Social Security was charity, okay? He didn't want charity. Didn't want it. He wasn't running around trying to find something for nothing. He was avoiding it. But in my talking to him, I was convincing him while he quit Alcoa Limited in 1945, that all of us children was paying in Social Security, and it wasn't charity. He bought this farm, Daddy bought this farm in 41 and paid, I think it was $11,000 for it, 92 acres. Could have bought 10 acres across the road for another $1,000, but was scared to tax it. But they sold over on Davis Ford, paid for about half of it, and in 45 paid this farm off. So, and that's the day he quit Alcoa Limited. He said he's going to quit today, got it paid for, and he did. It'd have been a little easier on us if it had stayed on for a while. We'd have had more nickels in our pocket. We didn't have many nickels. I mean, it was thin. But the land bought right, location. Well, Daddy died a millionaire, Mother didn't and they didn't know it. Didn't matter, they didn't care. They were into that anyway. But need more people in the world and in America today that are willing to contribute more than they can sing. Too many looking for something for nothing. But anyway, I wrote something down. You want to talk a little bit, Harry?
Didn't think of it till you mentioned Charlie Boy there a little while ago. But Keith, Charles' older brother, I don't think he called him Baby Charles, wasn't it? Anyway, Margaret and Keith called him Baby Charles, and I don't know, the rest of them I called him Charlie Boy or whatever. Real funny story happened. We moved to Virginia in 1953 and bought a farm up there. And Betty and Keith came up maybe a couple of years later, something like that. And there was a farm next door to us, 138 acres, that was also for sale. And Keith got a hold of Charles, and I think y'all borrowed the money from W.B. Kiker, did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Emily's the father. They borrowed the money from him to buy this farm. $5,000 for 138 acres. And they were in the attorney's office getting the deeds and everything wrapped up. And there was some type... Yeah, Charles was 20. Already a big college guy, you know, knew it all at the time. And they were in the attorney's office getting the deeds and everything wrapped up. And must have got in some type of a disagreement or whatever between Charles and Keith. Keith said, "Now, baby Charles," Charles said, "I felt just about that big sitting in front of this attorney, you know," and he called me Baby Charles. That's a pretty good story there. But think about reunions and mentioned all the Whitehead cousins that you didn't know. And this is one reason why reunions are, you know, pretty important. So that you get to know your cousins that you may not see very often. And I've been to 2 funerals this spring of an aunt and uncle. One was 95 and the other was 87, I think. And at the funeral, you learn things about an uncle that you never knew. And this is the thing about so many of our family. We just don't know that much about it. So it's very important that we have these get-togethers so we do learn each other and what they're doing and that type of thing. And when this uncle passed away, I guess it was in March, it was sobering to me because he was a Krausen and Mama was a Krausen. Now I'm the oldest of Papa and Mama Krausen's grandchildren. So, don't know how long that's going to last. But anyway, that's had to tell that story about Baby Charles there. I thought that was pretty good.
They called me Baby Charles till I was great big, 13 or 14, I guess, and some of them never did quit. But Aunt Sue Roberts, that's Mama's sister, decided that I was too big to be called Baby Charles, and that's where Charlie Boy came from. So some of them still call me Charlie Boy today, even though I'm 83 years old. Don't look a day over 80, do I? Does somebody else want to say something about anything? It don't make any difference. We're just all here amongst ourselves. You don't talk too long, we say.
Yeah. I wouldn't have a whole lot to say because I'm not old enough and wise enough to share much knowledge. No, but one thing I wanted to make an observation of is we've got people here from 94 down to newborns. And I've been involved with this family for the last 6 years. I've married Charlie's granddaughter, Sarah, and we've got 3 little kids together. But I just wanted to share how important it is that, to me, how close all of you are. I think it's a wonderful testimony to see a family that can, you know, live so close together and spend a lot of time together. I just want to say I'm grateful and thankful for all of you all that I've got to meet and get to know. And for those of you that I haven't, I look forward to that. But you all should really be thankful that you have such a wonderful family, and I sure am glad to be a part of it.
We won't talk too long.
Preston, it's good to know that you're married up. I think it would be cool if we determined who was with who. I'm Dad's daughter. I'm Charlie's daughter. Dad. I'm Charlie's daughter. Would everybody that's his lineage stand up? My sister is here. One of my brothers is here. My sister's son from Texas is here. Joel's wearing the black shirt. Roger is here, my brother. His daughters, Sarah, Katie, raise your hands. Those are his daughters. President's son-in-law, Paul. Son-in-law, where's Paul? There's Paul. And I think the children are over here, most of them.
Half the people here are mine. I'm sorry.
And then my daughter is here. I have four. John, Mark. These are Rogers, John and Mark with their wives, Christina and Barbie, Elizabeth. Barbie. My daughter's here, Holly, with her four. They're under the tree playing. But these are Charles's. Yes, in-laws. Oscar. Oscar's hiding. Holly's husband is hiding. He does have one sleeping though, so he's. But these are Charles's. Charles was in third in line. And Harry, do you want to come up, or in Aunt Laura Grace, and let's kind of point out who belongs to who and why we're all here. And my mom is here. Dad and Mom divorced years ago, but Mom is here. They've known each other since first grade, kindergarten, forever. Good, bad, and different. They've always been together in one way or another. So here we are.
Well, Charles is the oldest sibling here today, but the oldest was Keith, and all three of his are here. Jim, Robert, Pat, all stand up there. Come on, stand up. And Jim, all of your kids and grandkids stand up too. And the two little ones, one's asleep now. Okay. Okay. One day now. And Margaret, her daughter's here. Jane, where are you? Over here. Jane. And your daughter?
From Texas.
Carrie. And her, got three with her. And her friend Vicky back there. And Andy, is Howard and Brooke still here, or are they leaving? But anyway, Andy and Pat, they had their son here, Howard and Brooke, and her two kids there. And next is Laura. Stand up. And we've got Janet here and her two boys, and Paige back there, Brian, Logan, and Paige, and Chris. We don't leave Chris out. Brian's one got married. He got married in March. He's almost old enough because I think your dad was 29 when he got married. And so Brian, he just liked 3 weeks being 29. So. Good. See, Brian was born on my 50th birthday, so it's easy to remember then because he'll say happy birthday to me, and I'll say, well, happy birthday to Brian, you know, that type of thing. And then next was Tom, and we got Kenny back there. Kenny and Kimberly. And Rosemary, where are you? Over here's Rosemary. She doesn't have any of our kids here today, but she does have her close neighbors who are taking care of her during this knee problem that she has. Had knee surgery back a couple months ago. And I guess that's all.
Anybody else want to say anything? We'll let you talk.
Jim, you gonna talk?
You want to talk, Jimmy? Okay. Is everybody down? I wrote something down the other day, and it was, love is unusual. Love, caring, love is unusual. The more you give away, the more you end up with. So think about it. It's about the only thing that you can give away and end up with more than you started with. And if you'll think about that even in your own life, that's true. That is the way it is. But anyway, we're all done, and glad to see you all. It's better to get together like this than it is at funerals. It's a lot more pleasant, and most people enjoy eating And this pavilion is real close to where the house was. It's just right over there where we were raised. Like I said, 9 of us in about 900 square feet, no water, no bath. Before we moved over here, no electricity. I can remember before we had electricity, before we had a phone. But things have changed. They've changed a lot, and it's good that they've changed. It's like people talk about the internet being a bad thing. The internet's a good thing. You can disseminate bad info on it, or you can disseminate good information on it. In other words, talking about spreading the gospel. I mean, you're going to spread the gospel. I mean, my goodness, how could you more nearly get it sent around the world than any other way? But anyway, glad you all showed up. Glad you all got enough to eat. Meals taken care of. Don't worry about that. And enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.